tell me what an overpayment is?
Yes, I can. An overpayment is when a claimant receives benefits that they were not truly entitled to. And it could occur in one of two ways. One is non-fraud, and that's where a claimant makes a mistake, puts down something that is inaccurate, or says that they were laid off due to lack of work, and it turns out they were truly fired for cause or something like that. In those cases, we would likely find that to be an overpayment, but to be a non-fraud overpayment. If, on the other hand, someone completely is not honest in terms of their claim, they claimed, for example, that they were working as a hairdresser, self-employed, 1099, that earned income and filed for PUA, which is the unemployment program for the self-employed. We pay them benefits, and then we later learn by one way or another that they never worked as a hairdresser, had no earnings. Then that would be not only an overpayment, but a fraudulent overpayment. Main type of fraud that we're seeing, however, is identity theft fraud, and that's where criminal elements come in, steal identities, buy identities on the dark web from people. They come in and they file a claim as though they are Dan Ellzey with Dan Ellzey's date of birth, Dan Ellzey's Social Security number. They got it right. It runs right through our first check with Social Security Administration. And because of the way the PUA law was written, with no requirement for verification that they did ever earn money, and in fact, a prohibition from us looking into whether or not they ever earned money, they would get paid. If we later learn that it was fraudulent, and we do have ways of finding ID theft, then all of that would go down as fraud, and every penny paid would be listed as fraud.
So what should we expect when we're looking at the overpayments from 2020?
Well, I think you should expect them to be high. We can look at the first 3 quarters and we know where they are. They are high both in non-fraud and in fraud, but that's to be expected. The claims that we paid out were tremendously higher this year. The important number is not what our total dollar was in overpayment, it's really the percentage. So we could have a year where we pay out $1,000 and we have $300 worth of overpayments, fraud and non-fraud. $300 doesn't sound bad, but it is 30%. In another year, we have $4.7 billion worth of payments that go out. If we paid $10 million in overpayments, it would sound like a high number, but percentage-wise, it would be nothing when divided by the $4.7 billion in total payments. So the key in looking at this, and we have looked at it at 2017, 18, and 19 to compare our overpayment percentages, overpayment divided by total benefits paid, and we are doing better in 2020 than we did in those previous 3 years.
Can you provide me with more detail about why the 2020 overpayments are so high?
I think the simple answer is because payments are so high. Our payments have gone up so dramatically over the past year or 2 years that the amount of overpayments is going to go up as well, even if we're doing the same job that we did in those previous years. We received more initial claims in 8 months than we have in the past 5 years. We've paid out dramatically more money recently than we have in a decade. So when those numbers go up, the overpayment numbers go up. But as I said, the key is the percentage rate. If our percentage rate remains as good or better, then we're doing a good job. If it goes up, then we're losing the battle. This isn't just our problem. This is a problem that all states are having. You've seen the news. The state of Washington shut down their claims processing for days to try to get a grip on fraud. They estimate between $500 and $700 million in fraud alone. Maryland has had awful problems, Michigan, other states. So we've got fraud here, we know it. We've got overpayments here, we know it. But we are actively doing everything we can to avoid both, and where we have them, to stop it.
So, Mr. Ellzey, if it is determined that someone has been paid benefits for which they were not eligible, how does the agency notify them, and what kind of window do they have to respond to the agency?
Well, we start by sending them a letter telling them that the overpayment exists and how much it is. We put a notice on their portal, which they see when they go in to recertify, saying that the overpayment is there and how much it is. They then have three options. Number one, they can pay it. And if they pay it, then the overpayment is off the table. Number two, they can enter into a payment plan. We work with people to try to make it affordable for them to pay back the money that they should not have received, and we can spread it out over time. Third, if they disagree with us over the overpayment period or the amount of the overpayment, then they can file an appeal and they will receive a hearing on that.
If someone does file an appeal with the agency and loses that appeal, what happens next?
Well, once again, we try to collect the money. We will talk with them about a payment plan to get it paid. If that does not work out, then we move forward with statutory collection efforts. We can offset on tax returns. We can offset against future benefits that would be paid out. We can garnish wages. Throughout the pandemic, we have only garnished wages for fraud, not for overpayment, and we did that voluntarily. We will be resuming full collection efforts, however, beginning January 1 for anyone who's had at least 4 months notice of the overpayment. So the vast majority of people, if they were overpaid in March or April and they have not seen collection efforts, they will see collection efforts begin at that time.
So do you have any last thoughts or comments about overpayments?
Well, 2020 has certainly been a different year for everybody, and we look at overpayments from two standpoints. The first is the claimant. They made a mistake, something happened, they now owe us money back. In many cases, it was innocent on their part, but the fact is they owe the money back. On the other hand, this money that came out of the trust fund came from employers in the state of South Carolina. So we have to think about that as well. We are the stewards of that trust fund. We collect it, we preserve it, we're supposed to pay it out properly. Where we make a mistake, whether it's fraud or non-fraud, we have an obligation to make every effort we can to collect it. And we take that obligation just as seriously as we do our obligation to help claimants file a claim. As I said earlier, we know that a lot of people are filing claims that have never filed before. We know mistakes are going to be made, and where that happens, we do everything we can to work with them regarding the overpayment. If on the other hand it is fraud and we know it's fraud, then we go after it as aggressively as we possibly can.
If someone wanted to find out more about the overpayments or collections process, where could they get more information?
I think the best place to start is to go to the website. We've got a lot of really good information on there that tells people how they can deal with an overpayment, whether it's requesting a waiver, which is available to them, whether it's the prepayment plan, how it works, how to propose a prepayment plan. All of that is on the website, and we would suggest that they start there.